Yeah.
women disqualify themselves from hundreds of thousands of dollars every moment of every day.
Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Are you ready? Let's go do this. Amy, I'm so excited. You know, when your bio crossed my path, the first thought I had was you are a perfect guest for my audience. I love the title of your book, I See You. Because and you're an entrepreneur, a CEO, mom, wife, coach. But before we get into all the good stuff, I have a quick question for you. If you could instantaneously master any skill, what would it be?
Well, I mean, I have so many things. Well, first, I love pickleball. So but I'm not trained. So I think the mastery would be like, there's a secret part of me that wants like private lessons.
There you go. There's a business you can start right off of that one.
Which, yeah, it's kind of
Pickleball
a funny
lessons.
one, but there's something about that where I'm like, I can overcome a lot of my inadequacies in the game just by athleticism, but I really would love to like know what I'm doing.
Well, you're one up on me because I've never played pickleball.
So much fun.
Oh my gosh. Well, I would love if you share your story wherever you'd like to start. But the turning point for me in the book was when you had the epiphany moment when you were in your financial advisor's office and she told you that you weren't making enough money. So I would really appreciate if you weaved that into it as well and how that was really a pivotal moment for you, that like one of those pivotal life-changing moments after you heard that.
It was indeed. In fact, it's funny. I just am scheduling a time to meet with her in the next couple of weeks for just our annual check-in. So it was kind of fresh in my mind, this experience. But I'll back up just a little bit. Professionally, after college, I was a high school English teacher for a few years. And while teaching, started a small business in direct sales on the side, which grew into an enormous organization that I still own and run over about 20 years of time. So I built a really successful business. And at the same time, birthed and raised 3 humans who are now just about all 3 taller than I am. But and did a lot of life in there, not just work. So I think my journey has always been about the fullness of all of the things and not just
Mm.
the business. In fact, I'm working on this concept, this idea right now, even of this constant tension that I live in between fierce, loving, protective mom and ambitious, strategic businesswoman.
Mm.
And how do both of those things coexist, and which is the priority, and how do you do both? How do you
Yeah.
have both to the fullness? So that's been a lot of my journey, is figuring that out, I think. And also feeling like those two things can coexist. They don't have to be either or, that I could create a life where both of those could be there. So the story that you're talking about happened at a point about 7, 8 years ago, where kids were really busy, all involved in school stuff, sports things. My husband is a principal, and he's also the varsity basketball coach at our local high school. So we're like in the thick of life. All 3 kids were still at home at that time. And we had a meeting with our financial advisor, and she had us fill out this form with our financial goals. And so I remember what I was wearing. I remember what it smelled like. I remember the sounds in the room of the air conditioner blowing. And she kind of straightened the forms on her desk and leaned forward. And she said, "Your goals are great. You don't have really debt other than your mortgage. You know, you're doing a good job. You're just not making enough money
Mm.
if these are your goals. If you want to pay for all 3 of your kids to go to college, if you want to film, all of the things that we had put in the form." And I really felt like all of the air left the room,
Mm.
because publicly it felt like I was very successful. I think if you would have asked anyone around me, they would have said, yes, she is. So it felt, one, like it was my burden to bear. It felt like it was my responsibility. Ryan, loves his work. He's really great at it, but can't really increase his income outside
Yeah.
of getting older, and didn't want to have a career change. And so here I am thinking, okay, well, it's already so full life. I'm so busy running this business and parenting these kids and doing all the other things that we do, right? How can I how would that ever work that I could make more money? Where do
Yeah.
you even begin? And I think one of the things that I would say I took away, and I actually just revisited it this morning in my kind of reflection and quiet time, was just this: I didn't need to know the how, but I did make a resolved decision that I would,
Mm.
that I would figure it out. And I didn't have to know the how, but I would take this on. I would figure out, I wasn't going to sacrifice the things that were so important to me
Mhm.
for that. So
Mm.
that was sort of the turning point, which then eventually led to the start of Amy Kemp Inc., the new company, in which I spend most of my time and energy today.
Yeah. What were some of the small steps that you took in the very beginning?
Mm.
Sometimes what the big outcome was to increase the income. That's what I hear. But do you remember what some of those were?
I do. I had to stop. I actually had to stop doing more things than I had to start doing.
Mm.
I had to really look at all of the things I was doing and ask whether I was getting paid what I was worth for doing them. And then if I wasn't, I kind of just had to stop even before I knew what would take their place or replace them. I had to make space for something new.
How'd that make you feel when you knew you had to stop doing something that you were doing? Did you have this internal battle? It's like,
Um,
I know I don't want to stop this thing. And then how'd you wind up stopping?
Oh, I can still feel it welling up inside of me right now. And part of that was when you make decisions like that, everything that's in you that needs to be healed comes to the surface pretty quickly. The feeling of responsibility for all of these people that I was leading, knowing that my decisions were impacting them and not just me, knowing that people were going to be really disappointed because they had come to depend on things that I was giving away for free, knowing that people would be super critical, just really understanding all of that would be true. And I owed no one an explanation.
Mm.
And this was my journey. I shouldn't say I owed no one an explanation. I didn't owe the greater voice, the they that we put in our head, like what are they going
Mhm.
to think? I didn't owe that. I owed the people that were closest to me, the leaders that were closest to me, the people, I owed them an explanation and at least clear communication. But I didn't need a public announcement. I didn't need
Mm.
everyone to understand and validate my choices. I didn't need their affirmation. And in fact, it led to the loss of a lot of relationships that were important in my life, a lot of really strong pushback, a lot of feedback that wasn't
Wow.
solicited.
And
um,
that I guess that happens when you go and you do something different. Like it sounds like some decisions that you made were almost like radical in nature. Do you remember one specific that you could share to just give an idea of
yeah. Oh,
the
well,
flavor
like
of what you're talking about?
a great example would be we used a system called Voxer, and I would make daily messages that were going out for people, thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And I just had to stop. Like,
Wow.
I just had to stop. And so then there was like a void, which was like, well, then where are you? Why aren't you making these? These were a great part of my day, and they were, but I wasn't getting paid for them. And it was
Mm.
my intellectual property, and I was giving it away for free. And I've
Mm.
learned that, like in the greater marketplace, a lot of that was worth a lot of money, a lot of money. I just didn't know that. I didn't
Mhm.
understand the value of what I was doing.
Yeah.
So that's an example, but you
Yeah.
can imagine that people aren't happy about that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because they were getting something for free,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
I think the thing is out of that is you don't know what you don't know, right? You
Yeah.
didn't know at the time. And then now once you learn, then you have to pivot and change and go in a different direction. And that, that sometimes that doesn't make people really happy about that. So
And
yeah,
I don't look back on that. I look back on that and think, I was developing my voice. I was
Mhm.
learning my voice, right? I was gaining confidence so that today I could be on a podcast like this and have this kind of
Mm,
conversation. I was I was I was carving something. Like I was in the process of creation then.
yeah.
Just at some point either I outgrew that or it was like um I all of a sudden realized, "Oh, I've reached this point where it is worth more,
Mhm.
than what I'm being
Mhm.
paid for it." So, yeah, it's been a journey. It's been a really
I bet.
humbling one too. I haven't done it all super well. I've tried my best to do it as graciously and kindly and clearly as I could, but, there's mistakes along the way in a
Yeah. Well,
transition.
well, I think we all make those. I mean, every journey is not gonna
Mhm.
be without bumps along the
No,
way.
no.
What are some examples from your journey that,
Mhm.
was a bump, but you overcame them, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I learned is that not everyone was able or ready or needed to hear my reasoning for my own choices. In fact, it was detrimental and it wasn't their journey. I didn't need them to understand. They didn't, I wanted them to understand and validate my decision so much, but that wasn't necessary. And that's what I kind of learned is that I learned to look inside and I can still feel myself when I do it. I close my eyes because I learned to listen to that still small voice inside of me for the guidance instead of constantly looking externally for validation and confirmation that this was the right thing. Even the people closest to me at times I think were like, what in the world is she doing?
Mhm. Yeah.
you
That's when you
know?
know you're on the right path, when
Yeah.
people are going and like, why are you doing that thing?" And I
Or
think
leaders that had invested in me were disappointed or
Mm,
worried or concerned or disagreed strongly or right. And they were
yeah.
people I admired and respected greatly. And so I just really had to get quiet for a number of years. I had to really get quiet and still. I had to pull myself away from a lot of the places where I'd get confused and just get
Mhm,
really still so that I could re-access my connection to that inner voice, that like still quiet whisper that was
mhm.
guiding me.
Yeah.
And what it really came down to, which is so fascinating, is that the work I've done in every place as a teacher and in every business is really the same, right? It
How
was
so?
just,
What did
well,
you see that was a common thread?
yeah. I mean, the thing I loved about teaching when I was a teacher was like when the kid didn't think that he could do something, and I walked him through it millimeter by millimeter, and then he
Mm,
did it, and then he had this new set of skills, but more importantly, he had this new understanding of his greatness, right?
mhm,
And so, even as a leader, the thing that always lit my fire growing businesses was the development of leaders, the development, like when people didn't they're like hidden gems. That's what I
mhm.
always think, like, I think, "Oh, I can see it in there."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
can
yeah.
see the sparkle underneath this crusty exterior or whatever, right?
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
"Oh, like, ugh," like,
There's that hero inside that just wants to emerge, and when you're telling the story about the teachers, I can relate because I used to teach math at the high school level and for a number of years, and, it was that moment where a student didn't get it, and
Mhm.
then you walked them through it, and explained it, and you could see it in their eyes. Like, you could
Yeah.
literally feel it and see it in their brains, like, "Wow, I didn't understand that, but now I understand it." There's a sense of satisfaction there that you can't put a price tag on, and sometimes it's really hard to capture with words too, where
Mhm.
you just inspire somebody. So, I can see that where
Yeah.
that would be a common thread in everything that you do in your businesses or teaching or whatever. There's this that internal drive that no matter what it is that you're doing, to see somebody understand and realize that they have that hero inside them, that they have this greatness within them. What I like that you mentioned is that you talked about it took years. It
Mm,
took years to listen to that quiet voice and develop that on the inside. What were some of the things that you did to
mhm,
quiet it down? What did you
mm,
do to help you listen to that voice and emerge and become this person that says, "You know what? I'm okay that I'm making this decision even if you don't like it. I'm okay with that."
mhm. That's a great question because there were some real changes. I think a morning time of reading, reflection, prayer, journaling. I read, I follow the practice of the miracle morning. I really have for about 8 years consistently worked through the miracle morning where I'd read, I journal, I meditate slash prayer. That has been transformational. I always had some sort of practice like that, but I read 10 pages a day of a book, I journal just a little bit. I work through some things like affirmations that I do. But I think there was that morning became not a have to, it became I was so
Mhm.
hungry for it because it did become a place where I could receive. Even this morning, I feel like I received so that I could then come into my day and give. So that was one
Mm.
practice without question. I did actually start a yoga practice at that time also, which really got me back in tune with my body and like even paying attention to the things my body was telling me that I was ignoring or not paying attention to. That has been absolutely transformational
Mm.
and really a part of my life that I will not compromise now. And then I did add some fun things like pickleball, just some more guilt-free play where I was doing things that just lit me on fire, that made me giggle and laugh and forget to think. But I think the other part, even professionally, is that I really dug into the principles of the Habit Finder, which is the curriculum that I use with clients, and dug into some of the habits of thinking that were causing me
Mm.
to overwork and causing me to give myself away. What was happening at a subconscious level that I wasn't even aware of? I had to kind of bring some of that up to the surface so that I could look at it and like make some changes there also. So
Mhm.
I really did dive into the material that I use with clients personally also.
Mhm. Mhm. What were some of those habits, that
Mhm.
those thought habits that you had to dive into and learn about, and maybe, I don't know if you
Yeah.
rethink them, like alter them or
Yeah.
reframe them to help you?
If you're gonna make up a story, you might as well make up a good one.
I remember that from the book. That's a great quote.
I
That's a great
My
quote.
brain is super active, so
Mhm.
I can go quickly to catastrophe. I can go very quickly to fantasy.
Mhm.
So in the process of creating something, I can fill a workshop with 300 people in 2 seconds in my mind. The reality of doing that is a lot longer, and it's a lot more of a, working it out process, the actual creation of it, right?
Yeah.
Or all of the things that we want to create in our life, we can do so fast in our mind when we're vivid
Yes.
visualizers, when we can see things clearly, but the walking it out requires a little bit more. And so it was more about learning to stay in the present, to stay in today, to stay in the millimeters of creation, not from a sense of obligation, not from a sense of checking things off of a list or have to, but from a sense of choosing to,
Mm.
wanting to, getting to, being excited about and enthusiastic about. doing the tiniest, most boring, mundane steps of creation, especially
Yeah.
in growing a business, right? Falling back in love with that process and not just looking to find joy and happiness when I got there, wherever there was in my head that I had created, but really enjoying today, like
Yeah.
enjoying the actual process of doing the thing that created the result I was looking for. So
Yeah.
that also.
You mentioned about getting there,
Mm,
that if you remove that, like, yes, I want to accomplish that goal, but if you remove the euphoric feeling of getting there, do you find that you more enjoy the moment that you're in so that you kind of, it's kind of like leveling the playing field? Does that
mhm.
make sense? You
Yeah,
know, where it's like this
you're like,
moment's great, and but when I
mm,
get there, it'll be great, but it's okay. I'll just be on to the next mountain.
oh my gosh. Well, I lived so many years of growing a business thinking I would be happy once I got
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And then, I'm leading the number one team in the nation and I'm crowned the queen of the world and I'm, whatever. And not that I wasn't happy in those moments, but I realized like, oh, that wasn't really the point. Like the
Yeah.
point and what I actually really enjoyed was the day-to-day
The
interactions with
journey,
the
right?
team, the little tiny steps I took every day that like moved the needle forward. It was that. So I think it's about detaching the happiness from the there, bringing it to the present, and what's so cool about that is when you do that and you pull the happiness, you detach it from the out there. Most people do this with like retirement or
Yeah.
vacation, or
Yeah.
they'll do it with like when I earn a certain amount of money, then I will enjoy whatever, fill in the blank, right? But when you detach that happiness from there and you bring it back to here, you actually tend to get there faster,
Mm.
way faster.
That makes so much sense. That makes so much sense, and, I think I love it that you just detach yourself from the out there, and then you just bring yourself into the moment, because really, at the end of the day, you only have this moment. Like, we only have this moment right now in this podcast. It's like we started it, I don't know how many minutes ago, but we only have this moment to embrace the joy that we have in our life right now. Like, we can visualize out there, we can do all we want,
Totally.
even retirement, even from a retirement perspective. I'll be
Oh,
happy when I retire. Well, if you're 30 and you're going to retire at 60, you've got 30 years in between. And if you're doing something you don't like, that's a
mhm.
lot of years of just what? So I love that you painted this picture of separating yourself from the happiness of out there and embracing what's right in front of you and bringing the happiness into the now. I love that. I love it.
Wanna add that, like, it's not bad to go to that vision or to have
Sure.
it, right? What is dangerous is when we go there and then we set up camp and live there in our head. So go there
Good
for a
point.
minute or 2 every day and allow yourself to feel, the excitement of a dream fulfilled, but then come back and say, "What are the actual tangible steps I'm taking today to create that?"
Mhm.
So what are the things that I'm doing that actually are moving me toward that outcome and not just attaching it, right? So and
Right.
enjoying that process too. So again, I think there's always that, like, and it's not even bad to go to catastrophe at times because that can help you to really avoid making some bad decisions, right? Or
Sure.
addressing things where you say like, "Oh, this is a potential pitfall. I better make some choices in the here and now that prevent that
Yeah.
from happening." So,
Yeah.
anyhow,
Yeah.
but
No,
yes,
no, no. I think it's an extremely important but subtle distinction that you bring up,
very
because
much.
yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's okay to
Mhm.
think about what you want to do out there, because yeah, I mean, it's good for us
Yeah.
to set visions for ourselves. And you mentioned that before as well, but I appreciate the subtle
Mhm.
distinction between
Yeah.
that. The title of your book, I See
Mhm.
You, I in the midst of our conversation is threaded in that idea that you saw yourself, you see you on the
Mhm.
inside now. You went inside, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about your book. It's titled I
Mhm.
See You. So what inspired you to title the book that way?
Yeah. Such a good question too. I had to fight for my title. They really wanted the title of the book to be more about me. and they wanted to centralize me. And I am on the cover of the book, so I am
Yeah, right.
centralized in real life.
All
But
right.
I also the book wasn't about me at all. The book was about the people that I was writing it for. And so it was inspired by a conversation that I had with a woman I met at a local community event. She and I met very briefly, introduced by a mutual acquaintance, and I just wanted to know more. I felt like she was so cool. And so I reached out to her privately and just invited her for a cup of coffee. And then we talked for about an hour. I kind of just listened to her story. And I will say she is someone who has a seat at really important tables. She is a leader in her work and community. She's a busy mom, and she's very visible, very visible. So about almost done with the conversation, and she says to me a little brusquely, maybe a little cynically, uh, "Why did you invite me to coffee today?"
Hmm.
And I, without hesitation, just looked at her and I said, "Because I see you."
Mm.
And she put her head down in her hands and just wept. And I just kind of sat there and let her. It felt like a really long time. And then she sat up and kind of wiped her eyes and she said, "Thank you. So few people do." That is my person, right? It's the person that everyone's seeing, but no one's seeing. That's who I wrote this book for. That was really when that conversation happened, I knew that that was the title of the book.
Yeah. Well, I'm thankful that you didn't let them
Mhm.
change it. Because I got that as I was reading through it. It's like,
Mhm.
wow, you do have your story in it, and a lot of books do. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm in the process of writing mine as well, and you can't help but not put your story in there because that's the thrust of the book. The core message of your book is you can't outwork your thought habits. What does that mean to you?
Mhm.
And what are some examples of those thought habits and how they affect people and how you can't outwork them?
I know. I feel
Yeah.
so convicted by this core message all the time because I really want to. I'm a good worker. Like, I
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
sometimes like if I could just work harder, like I'll do that.
Yeah, but there's a lot of that out there though.
yeah,
Just work harder, just grind it. And sometimes, yes, you do have to work hard, but what are your thoughts on
yeah.
that? Obviously, you said in the book, you can't outwork your thought habits.
Yeah, it came to the point where I honestly couldn't. I mean,
Mhm.
I couldn't going back to the original story, I couldn't earn more money by just working harder because there was no more time and energy to give. And so then that caused me to think, okay, so imagine riding a bike. I can't just keep pedaling harder and faster and harder and faster and harder and faster and more to get further. I have to actually shift gears so that I can slow the pedaling but make cover more ground,
Mhm.
right? And so a lot of that, one is just being able to identify my areas of natural genius and to really harness those and use those to create income. Our areas of natural genius often feel so easy to us that we don't even recognize that they're valuable. As an example, I lead groups called Encounter. It's like 8 to 10 women, and we work through this curriculum called the Habit Finder together. And I do semesters because I'm still a teacher at heart. Like I do fall and spring semesters.
Yeah.
Well, I've always literally, I can remember even as a child gathering all the kids in the neighborhood. We had a club. You had to put a piece of chewed gum on a tree to get in the door. And I would lead like discussions about our club and what we were going to do to help the neighborhood be better or something. I don't even know, but I vividly remember everyone sitting in a circle and me facilitating, right? I've been doing that since I was a child. And then I did that as a teacher. And then I did that growing businesses. Well, what I didn't know is that not everyone can do that. Not
Mhm.
everyone can gather a small group of people and facilitate a conversation that is transformational and that really creates life change. But I thought because it was so easy to me and I've been doing it my whole life, oh, well, everyone can do that. Right. And so what I realized was like, oh, that's exceptionally valuable. In the one of the books I use with my clients, it's called The Greatest Salesman in the World, but there are a series of scrolls in it. It's a famous book. A lot of people know it. But one of them says, this is in scroll 4, it says, I am rare and there is value in all rarity. Therefore, I am valuable.
Mm,
And so the same is true for like your natural genius. It's difficult to see because it feels so easy to us. But if
right.
it's rare and not very many people can do it, then it's very valuable. And there's a way for you to monetize that. I'm not sure how, and you don't really have to know either. But once you recognize it, the hows will start to appear and show up for you.
Yeah.
And you can just follow the breadcrumbs and it will guide you toward it. But underneath that, I had to change the habit of thinking that said, this is so easy, I should just give it away for free. No, no, like this is so easy because it's so valuable. How can I
Yeah.
use it to serve the world and then be compensated in equal measure for the value it's bringing to people's lives? It's a better question. It's a different habit of thinking.
Right.
So,
Right. Right. Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. I could see that. So you can't outwork your thought habits on that. And also the value part of that, what you
mhm.
were talking about, how often women undervalue themselves. I wanted to talk about that too, because you talk about in the book how you had to overcome limiting beliefs in
Mhm.
order to move forward to create the life that you wanted. So, talk
Yeah.
about what some of those were, how
Mhm.
you overcame them. And the one that I really wanted to point out in your book, you mentioned you had to overcome low self esteem that
Yeah.
was ingrained due to overworking
Mhm.
and being underpaid.
Yeah.
So, or under earning, I guess I should say. So
Yeah.
I'm really interested in hearing about that.
Oh,
Yeah.
women disqualify themselves from hundreds of thousands of dollars every moment of every day
Mhm.
by thinking they aren't qualified, they don't have enough experience, they aren't ready, that there's someone else more qualified. But they also do crazy self sabotage. I am working with someone right now who is on the precipice of this huge, like, benchmark of sales. And she has been tracking it all year long, and the end of the business year is in a few months. And the last month or two, her sales have dropped.
Ooh.
And she was right on track, right? She's never hit this before. And nothing has happened. Like there's been no external reason except that I think she got really spooked. What if I am that great? What if I do end up on that stage? What if people do then start asking me, what did you do? How did you do this? What if then what if I can't do it again? What if this was a fluke? What if, right?
Yeah.
What if I'm not worthy of the income that I'll receive when I reach this goal? Am I really that good? Do I really have something to offer? All of those questions, all of those habits of thinking, that's unhealed self esteem. Our value, our worth, our worthiness is tied to our money and it's reflected in our money, right? I wrestle with it daily. It's just a daily relationship that I work at, right? To heal that part of me. But I see women be so creative in their self sabotage,
Mm.
filling their time, even like just getting sidetracked by relational issues with people that they've created or distractions or things that they say yes to all of a sudden in volunteer capacities that take up all this energy, or they start showing up and not being their best self. They self-sabotage because the reward feels too great or it feels like they aren't worthy of it. It's really hard to really wrestle with the idea that like money has so much to tell us. It has so much feedback to give us. It has so much information for us, but it's really hard, and it causes us to have to look at a deeper habit of thinking or a deeper level of ourselves. So,
Yeah, your book, there's a quote that in your book it says, quote, "Your relationship with money is a powerful mirror to your relationship with yourself." So
yeah.
that's what you're talking about.
Which is equal parts awesome
Yeah.
and frustrating
I
and like
bet.
irritating.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
It's like, "Oh, really?"
Yeah, it sounds like it's something that you still need to combat, but you don't. So what are some tricks that you use to
Mm,
help yourself
yeah,
stay in that, I am worthy?
yeah. I think
Because it's hard, if you have that ingrained
yeah.
path and you grew up that way, what are some things you do for yourself that keep you in that state to remind you, you know what? Yeah, I am great of this, the things that I'm receiving and what's going on in my life.
Money is money's just a thing, right? Like, it's just a thing that it has a lot of information for us, but I think that the what I do with it is look at it from kind of the observer's chair where I'm outside of myself, like, how come I'm behaving this way about it?
Mm,
Not being super punitive or, like, judgmental or rigid or crazy, "There I go again, failing," it's not that kind of voice.
mhm.
It's a compassionate, hey, like curiosity, what's going on? What do you need to slow down? What need are you trying to meet in a way that it can't be met through this thing? What choices have you made out of fear or desperation? Money doesn't move toward those feelings or those energies. Money moves toward a peaceful energy, a joyful energy, a receiving energy. It moves toward possibility, and it moves toward excitement, and it moves towards certain kinds of feelings in us and away from others. And often we don't tend to those feelings. We just allow everything around us to affect how we feel all day long instead of like really saying, I'm going to alter the way that I feel so that I can attract the money that I deserve and want. But it's a daily practice, right? It's a daily relationship. It's not something where you like fix it or you solve it. It's like our relationship with our health or with our time management. It's a daily like choice that we're making around money. And it's relational. It's just relational. We have a relationship with it. So,
Wow. So how did you come into tune with the feeling of
mm,
money in your life? Where you
oh,
because you had to come to a point where you went from that financial advisor's
mm,
office,
yeah.
you're not earning enough, and I would imagine there was probably a set of feelings around that at the
Mhm,
moment, and obviously you're not in that place now. So, are there
mhm,
any little small steps that you did for yourself that
mhm,
helped move the needle to where you are now to have a better
mm.
relationship with money?
Can I ask you a question?
I guess. They get
What
scary in my own podcast.
Yeah, I
Go right
know.
go right
What does
ahead. Go right
like,
ahead. I'm an open book.
what does it feel like to you when you're in the place where you bring in income? Where, like, you are in a creative mode where money is moving toward you? What does it feel not what are you doing, but what does it feel like inside of you?
When it moves towards me, that's a really hard question for me because I've been a W-2 employee my entire life. So the
Oh,
paycheck is expected. The paycheck's
interesting.
expected.
Yeah.
There's only been a few times in my
Uh-huh.
life, but nothing on a consistent basis, and to be honest with you, if I look back at it, when I was paid for those things, I was underpaid. I
Oh.
wasn't really getting what I was worth in those moments, and it really when I evaluate it, I go back to I had such a low self-esteem of myself, and
Sure.
this was a while ago. It's not a place where I am right now. Fortunately, I've done a lot of
Mm.
hardcore self-development work in the last 8 months, but I would say if I go back and think about it, I have to say maybe there were a few times, but yeah, when I did something and I got paid for it and the money was moving towards me, the sense of satisfaction that I
Mm.
had was like, "Wow, yeah, I did that thing and I did it well and it came to me." I don't know if that answered your
Can you
question or
describe what that feeling is a little more?
For me, I think it's a sense like there's a
Yeah.
sense of fulfillment there. There's just a sense of peace and satisfaction that I did something and someone recognized what I did.
Yes. Okay. So that feeling
Yeah.
if you can tap it and work from that place and keep your brain from being so fixated on the hows, but more focused on staying in that feeling, money will
Mhm.
tend to move toward you in the most surprising, cool ways. And I
It's
do
happened
think
a few times.
yeah, I do
Yeah.
think that being an employee can, like, be protective where we don't really have to deal with our all the noise in our heads because a lot of it is, like, just hidden under that paycheck that is
Yeah.
consistent, right? But I do think that moving into a more entrepreneurial space also gives us the opportunity to learn about all of the things that come up that do need to be healed so that we can more tap into that money coming toward us. It's not something I recommend people do quickly or like it can be really jarring if you do it too fast. So I do love the more gradual like shift from one income source that's steady and predictable to like a more entrepreneurial one because it can just be really terrifying and paralyzing to people. But I
Right.
definitely know that that feeling, even if you've only experienced it once, it doesn't matter that it's not because what you know in that moment, I could hear it in your voice, is that it's not about the money, but it is about the money, but it's not really the money,
Right.
right? It's like
Yeah.
this, "Ooh, that felt good." Like, that felt like I expanded. That felt like I contributed and then received. That felt reciprocal and life-giving.
Mhm.
That's the energy that money moves through. And so
Mm.
where do you feel that, and how can you feel that more times throughout your day? Then money starts to move toward you in the most crazy, unexpected ways.
Mm. That's exciting. I mean, in my journey the last couple months, I have been pressing more into like the law of attraction and
Mhm.
learning about how our bodies resonate at different energy frequencies, and that when you are at when you're at that positive state of mind, when you are attracting people and you have this positive radiant energy, then you start attracting things, as you said, they just come from unexpected places. And I have had that happen the last couple of months where just,
Mhm.
it's just like, wow, I didn't know where that came from, or that podcast guest came out of nowhere and I had a great conversation, or I connected them with somebody else, versus a lower frequency where anger resides and worry and fear. And to your point about the W-2, yeah, there's something in that where it's good to have a W-2 while
Mhm.
you're in this space of creating and expanding and moving, because if you have that, and me personally, I mean, if you know that your four walls are covered
Yeah.
and things are taken care of, then you don't have to come out of a scarcity mindset mentality. You have more of a, okay, I'm okay right where I am. Now I have this freedom in my mind to go and create these other things that are going to move my needle in the direction that I want it to go in. So I do agree with you there, jumping. Although there's some people who jump. I mean, I think everybody's different, but
Absolutely. I
you
think
know,
some people have a higher threshold for that
oh,
kind of
sure.
risk, right?
Yeah,
I
sure.
don't.
Yeah.
But
No,
I
I
think
thought I did, but I don't.
no.
I'm trying to force it to all those out there who wanna force themselves into the
Yeah,
box, like, yeah, just go jump, but your gut is telling you don't go jump.
yeah,
Listen to your gut.
yeah.
I can
And the
tell
other
you.
thing I think is like, oh, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You learn that
Sure.
when you're a teacher, right? Like at the
Right.
base of our needs is safety and security. And if that need isn't met, you can't move up to the next, which is like love and belonging. And then all the way up at the top of this pyramid is like self-actualization, right? But if you don't feel safe and secure, you don't have the four walls and the food and you
Yeah, right,
can't, it's like you just get paralyzed.
right.
So I think, but some people don't have as high of a degree of fear of that as others. So it's kind of knowing yourself and your own capacity for that. I also think that entrepreneurship is a luxury. Not everyone, single moms, for example, if you need health care for your kids and you don't always have the luxury of being able to just go off and do your own thing without building it slowly on the side and letting it grow so that it's big enough to support your whole family. Or if you are the sole provider for your family, you don't always have the luxury. So like I always had this husband who was earning this steady income, I had the luxury of being able to go off and create these now robust businesses. But that gave me a lot of freedom. So I also don't want people to feel shame or like it's bad to be an employee. There are times where that choice is really wise, and 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 you can be open to the same flow, and money can move toward you in the craziest of ways. So I have a lot of clients who work as traditional employees who have doubled their income in ways they never expected without working more, a lot of them working less, even within the context of their current companies. It doesn't always mean a huge upheaval and I have to go do a big startup gig, you know?
Yeah, right.
Or
Yeah.
you
Oh, I
could, but
just
it
I
doesn't have to. So,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I appreciated everything that you just said about
Mm,
being a W-2 employee versus not. I think there's this undercurrent out there. It's like, everybody just quit your job. You can
yeah.
be an entrepreneur too. And we forget, as you said, successful entrepreneurs need W-2 employees.
Yes. And it's not
It's
for everyone, right? Not
right. Yeah,
everyone wants the burden of the roller coaster of entrepreneurship. It's not
sure.
for everyone.
Yeah, and your
Or
book talks
within
about that too, you talk
Yes.
about your ups and downs and,
Yes.
when you think you're going to earn money and you're not and it doesn't
Mhm.
happen and,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's not you're right, it's not for everybody,
Yeah.
so I
And that's
appreciate that.
totally okay. Like, it's
Yeah, it's
totally
okay, yeah, it's okay.
but
Isn't it
I
funny how we don't give ourselves permission when things are okay when
Mm,
they're really okay, and you listen to those other voices? It goes back to what you were talking about before, like, you
yes.
have to go inside and listen to what's in there first, and when you are safe and secure with what's
Mhm.
going on the inside, then those outside voices, you can choose to let them affect you or not, and I heard that in your story as well, people who
Mhm.
didn't agree with you or people who thought you weren't doing the right thing, but you deep down in your core, you knew who you were, you knew yourself, and making the decision, you made the best decision for you.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, what's
Yeah.
something that very few people agree with you on?
Hmm. Something that very few people agree with me on. That's such a really wild question. Honestly, I think most people would disagree that you can earn more money working less.
Mm,
I think that most people disagree with that inherently. Again, I'm not saying I love to work. I'm not saying like we're just trying to get out of work. Work is actually one of the great joys of my life. That's not the message. I'm just saying that sometimes you can creatively generate income without adding more hours in
yeah.
new ways that you've never considered.
Well said. Well
So,
said. Yeah.
yeah.
I like that. I like that a
Mhm.
lot. It's about being more efficient. It's about looking
Yeah.
for those opportunities without making yourself work harder, quote unquote. Last I checked, we only get 24 hours in the day and we have to sleep some of those. So
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
not no more is getting added there. What's one thing that you thought would be hard about creating your life where it is now, but really wasn't, and then flip it. What's the one thing you thought would be easy and wound up being more challenging for you?
Mm. One thing I thought it would be hard. I think this all would revolve around kind of my role as a mom and as a parent. It's both hard and not hard. So I'll kind of answer it at the same time. And I'll give you like an example. My son had back surgery a couple of weeks ago. He's a senior in high school. Anyhow, it's a long story, but ended up back in the hospital with an infection.
Mm,
And we're like going through this whole journey. And my first reaction is like, this is such a disruption. I have all of this stuff booked, in my days, and it's really important work that has been planned for a long time in these days, and everything had to be rescheduled and moved, and it was just sort of like unexpected. First, I felt super frustrated about that, and at the same time, I feel this fierce protective, like, If there had been metal bars on the doors of the hospital, I would have pulled them apart and gotten in there to be with him, right?
Mm,
Like nothing could have kept me from being there with him. And so the reframe, the story that I guess I've learned to walk myself through is instead of being frustrated and framing this as a disruption, seeing it as a part of the greater process of what I'm creating. I'm creating a whole life, a whole life. Part of that life is a business. Part of that life is being a mom, right? But that wasn't a disruption. It was part of the creation. It was part of having a family, was caring for someone when they're sick, right? That's
mm,
actually what I'm creating. That's the point. That's why I have the business, so that I can be
yeah,
there, right? Like, so
right.
this our brains want us to go either or, and I thought it would be really difficult to be as ambitious as I am and, like, I love growing businesses. It's my natural genius. I'm so good at it. I thought that'd be really hard being a mom. But what I've
Mm,
found is like the business is just a tool that I'm really good at that I get to use to create a life. And that I also have these other priorities, but I don't need to do the either or. And so,
mm.
yeah, I
Sounds like
can
the
live.
next book. I'm looking forward
Yeah,
to the next book. Amy, I wanna be mindful of your time, so
yeah,
I know we're
of course.
wrapping up on the hour here. So I got my 3 core questions I always ask.
Yeah.
The first is, please share a book or resource that has had a significant impact on you.
Yeah, the book I recommend to almost everyone, I've probably sold thousands of copies of this book, is called Secrets of Six-Figure Women.
Mm,
And it's by an author. She was Barbara Stanny, and now she's Barbara Hewson, new name. But she wrote this book. She was a journalist who was assigned to interview women who earned six figures. And she sort of had all of these preconceived notions about what they would be like, and in her interviewing and getting to know these women, had a total life transformation,
mm.
and learned a lot about herself and about women who are utilizing and creating money in greater quantities. And so the book is just fantastic. It's awesome.
Okay. Thank you for that one. What's
Mhm.
one question or topic you wish I would have asked about, and how would you have answered the question or
Mm.
expanded on the topic? And I know that could I always ask
Yeah,
that question, and people are we could talk
yeah,
for another 10 minutes.
I know. I love to talk about unpaid labor. I love to talk about how women do the lion's share of unpaid labor in our world, and how we often miss out on opportunities because we are bogged down by really important work of caring for people, but things like laundry and shopping and cooking and
Yeah.
dishes and buying clothes and making appointments and planning birthday parties and all of that. There's a whole unpaid labor survey in the book that's really powerful. And then just a whole dialogue about how this unpaid labor is vital to our communities and our families, but we don't have to do it all. The world that we live in now, especially the traditional work world, was not created with two people at home who work full time. It was created with the idea that one person would be home taking care of all the unpaid labor and one person would go out of the home and make the money. And so, what has happened is that women have left the home to go to work, and not left any of the unpaid labor that they were doing. And
Yeah.
so then when we feel frustrated about not being able to move forward professionally because we're so tired and burdened, it's just about what do we do with this? How do we more equally distribute it? How do we offload some of it or delegate some of it? Not that it's not important, but just we have to recognize the weight of it, and
Yeah.
what it's really taking for us to do it.
Yeah, I remember that chapter, and I did take the unpaid labor
Mhm.
survey. Now, I'm in a little bit different season of life. My kids aren't home; they're all in their 20s, so it's really just me and my husband's home too. And so, but when I took it and I added it up at the end, I went, "Holy smokes!" There's like 14, 15 hours, and I don't do a lot, but it was like 14, 15 hours of unpaid labor in there. And I was like, I was shocked. Honestly, I did not think it was that many hours. And when you put that over a month period, that, that 14 hours is 2 8-hour days I'm spending a month, doing these things.
Right.
They're unpaid labor. It was actually pretty fascinating, but you've found that there's a balance that you can have. You can get
Mhm.
things done, but you can also be in the business world and take care of your family and all that. That's the next book. We're not going to give it
Yeah,
away. I'm excited
yeah.
for that one.
And also you can't do it alone.
And you
That's
can't do it alone. Yeah,
for
that's the big
sure,
one.
right? Like, it does require a community of people, a
Sure.
team of people supporting you.
Well,
So, yeah.
sure, sure. I mean, if you're gonna have somebody come in and
Mhm,
do the laundry and clean the house and stuff, you have to find the right person for that as
mhm.
well, because you're having somebody come into your
Yeah.
home
Well, it
and
requires a level of vulnerability for sure.
sure,
Mhm.
sure. Yeah, sure. But there's also you're gonna exchange a level of intimacy as well because that
Yeah,
person is gonna be involved in what's going on in your life, in your home too. But yeah, vulnerability and yeah, they kind of go hand in hand.
it brings up a lot.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I bet it does. Yeah, it's a whole other podcast.
Mhm, yeah. Mhm,
So, as we close, what is one small step that someone can do today that's gonna help them change their tomorrow?
mhm. Yeah, I think it is an unapologetic investment in yourself on a daily basis, even if it's just carving out time to read 10 pages from a book every day, but not apologizing for investing in you in small doses that where there are no fireworks and no one's applauding and no one notices, but just these tiny bite-sized investments do add up over time and that you're worth it, without question worth it.
Love it. I love it. Amy, thank you for the gift of your time. I've enjoyed our conversation so much.
Mhm.
How can people find you?
Great question. The easiest place to find me is on amykemp.com. So my website has everything about my book and my work. It also has a place where you can take the Habit Finder assessment that I use for free. And it's a fun tool. You get the results right away. So you can kind of look at them and discover your own habits of thinking. And then I would invite people to follow me at Amy Kemp Inc. on both Instagram and Facebook. I love social media and use it a lot to just communicate the message of my work to my followers and to my clients also. So, yeah, I'd love
Yeah.
to have you join the fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is. It has been. I have started enjoying it too. And yes, it is. And I'm looking forward to it. By the time this comes out, it will be over, but you're launching your first workshop around your book. So I am
Mhm.
looking forward to that.
Yes.
Definitely. So I'm sure there'll be more of that in the future as well.
Yes. Yes.
So, well, Amy, thank you. Thank you. Thank you again for the gift of your time. I've enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, check out my website, personalcoachfinder.com, and find someone who can help. Remember, life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by choice. Take small steps today and make your life awesome, friends.